and welcome to this month's episode of The Monthly Blend, featuring the heads of the top accelerators and incubators in the Baltimore, Washington region. I'm Tian Wong, one of your co-hosts today. I'm the CEO of Opus 8, which invests in early-stage fintech, health tech, and marketing technology companies through our Phoenix Fund. We also help alternative investment funds, as well as companies of all kinds, raise private capital through our investor network of over 3,000 accredited high net worth private investors, family offices, and angel investors. The Monthly Blend is a monthly video podcast featuring conversations with investors, entrepreneurs, and game changers who are making an impact in the greater Washington, D.C. and Baltimore regions. Our intent is to stimulate thought and action, to break down silos, encourage regional cooperation, and help drive innovation and entrepreneurship throughout our region. My co-host Anthony Millen and I are thrilled to welcome our 5 awesome guests today. In alphabetical order, they are Kathy Brady, who is entering her 6th year as the CEO of the Frederick Innovative Technology Center, also known as FITCI. Kathy has been a Vistage chair, founder of a successful business consulting firm, and a commercial real estate developer. She's currently a board member of TEDCO, the Maryland Technology Development Company. Jeff Cherry is the managing general partner of Conscious Venture Partners and founder of Conscious Venture Labs. Jeff has been a national leader in the conscious capitalism movement for many years. Jeff is an entrepreneur, former hedge fund manager, and a former architect. Next, we have Kate Goodall, who is the co-founder and CEO of Halcyon, their Incubator program, which serves the best social entrepreneurs from around the world. Since launching the main incubator program, Kate has gone on to add a fund, an angel investment network, and a sister incubator for artists. In 2016, Kate helped establish We Capital, which is a consortium of leading businesswomen investing in and supporting women and women-led companies. Prior to her role at Halcyon, Kate was an underwater archaeologist and worked in the museum field. Matt Hanson is co-founder at Pax Momentum, an accelerator he founded just 1 year ago. Happy anniversary, Matt.
There you go.
He's also a principal at the early stage investment firm of Blue Ventures, which is a highly active private investment firm here in Washington, D.C. He is an experienced board member, investor, and executive, being involved with some of the leading technology companies in the Washington region over the last several years. Ryan Sears is a startup ecosystem builder based in Annapolis, Maryland. Ryan is co-founder of Founder Track, which runs cohorts of promising early-stage companies. He's also co-founder of Launch Annapolis, which incubates leading companies in the Annapolis region. He's also founder and CEO of Main Street Holdings, which is a residential real estate development firm. I'd like to welcome all of you guys, and we're excited for the conversation. And at this stage, let me turn it over to my co-host, Anthony Millen.
Great. Well, thank you, Tian. I'm always so honored and exciting to be co-hosting the Monthly Blend with you. Just briefly, I am the founder and chair of Next, an innovative new model for delivering legal services to startup and emerging growth companies powered by Shulman Rogers, venture partner in Urbanus, a seed stage venture capital fund, and have been a serial entrepreneur for over 20 years. And very, very excited to have Matt and Kathy and Jeff and Ryan and Kate with us today. So what I'd like to do first is start off just by hearing a little bit from each of you about your accelerators, and really interested to know from each of you what makes your accelerators unique and what is your big vision for your program over the next 12 months. And maybe we'll start with Kate.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Tian. If nothing else, you've given me an excuse to put on real clothes and makeup today, which I do appreciate. So I co-founded Halcyon. We started the incubator back in 2014, and we are looking for the best entrepreneurs around the world that are creating both profit and impact. We have a very unique program in many respects, probably most known to everyone because it's residential. So they actually come to live with us for 5 months, but we provide a lot of other benefits, including a $10,000 stipend. They get Arnold and Porter lawyers, Deloitte consultants, AWS credits, mentorship, and a leadership coach. And probably best of all, we take absolutely no equity in their ventures. We're about to welcome our 14th cohort, and they've collectively impacted about 2.5 million lives around the globe, created almost 2,000 jobs, and secured over 150 million in follow-on funding. In terms of looking down the barrel of 2021, I'm actually more optimistic about it than that anecdote sounds. We have really got a big vision about growing the number of entrepreneurs that we serve, as well as the number of ways that we serve them. So we are launching an intensive program with AWS to serve women founders in Bahrain. And we're looking across the MENA region to how we can support women in the Middle East. We're also launching another program to serve Black and brown women. That's in partnership with Black Girl Ventures and Bank of America. And then we just got a $1.5 million grant at the end of last year from the Department of Commerce to expand our work serving entrepreneurs in opportunity zones. And then lastly, we're, after many years of doing this and seeing some of the gaps in this region, and we can talk more about that later, we're expanding our capital mechanisms. So on the back end of our incubator, we have a fund. Last year, we launched an angel network, which I can talk more about, and we're looking into launching a microloan fund so that we can certainly serve some of the gaps that crop up in our region, and also that disproportionately affect founders of color and women.
Great. Thanks so much, Faith. It sounds like you have a very big 2021.
Yeah, we're not doing much.
Next, I'd like to ask Ryan just to update us in terms of Founders Track.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Tien. We ran an accelerator for the last 4 years or 3 years. We did 4 cohorts. And about 2 years ago, we decided to build a virtual platform so that we could expand our reach and kind of get more deal flow. And when COVID hit, this kind of virtual platform became a real asset, as you can imagine. And so we, received some feedback that, other accelerators might be interested in using our platform. And so we expanded that, put a layer of productization on it, and partnered with a few organizations. Our vision is really to significantly de-risk the company building process through systemization and measurable data points. And so we've built an end-to-end virtual platform that accelerators can use to scale up their operations and expand their impact, and kind of that virtualization of their programs and increase the number of companies they can impact by, we've seen as much as 5x they've been able to do in this new virtual environment without losing any quality, without adding any labor cost. And one of those accelerators is on the call today. It's Jeff Cherry with Conscious Venture Labs. And we're so proud to support their mission of conscious capitalism and many other organizations. And so excited to kind of join the conversation today and talk about how we can be better at accelerating companies.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. It's really great to have you on the show today. And that's a good lead into Jeff to tell us about Conscious Venture Labs.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony and Tien. I think I've known Tien the longest on the call, only a little bit longer than I've known Kate, probably twice as long, but happy to be here with you, with all of you guys, and to talk about some of this important work that you're all doing. So for those of you who don't know, founded the Conscious Venture Lab in 2013 after a stint for about 7 years running a hedge fund in New York. And it all goes back to a previous life when I was in the management consulting world and ended up working on a couple of books about this idea of stakeholder management of conscious capitalism. One was called Firms of Endearment. The other was called Conscious Capitalism. That was written by a guy named Raj Sisodia along with John Mackey. And I just became, I'm an architect by training, didn't go to business school. I started my own firm, sort of learned on the fly. Tiana and I talked about this. I got my MBA through FIRE just by sort of doing it real time. But became really enamored back in the mid-2000s with this idea that there was a new narrative being developed about the practice of capitalism. That it wasn't about just about a bunch of greedy little bastards trying to do each other in, that there was a much more holistic way to think about building businesses and practicing capitalism that was not just about worshiping at the altar of shareholder value, but rather at creating value for all of your stakeholders. Now, that's come into vogue now with the Business Roundtable in last August, putting out a statement about this, and lots of people sort of talking about it. But we've been working on this since about 2004 when we started researching and building this, working on the books. And everything we do today really is a outgrowth of that work, thinking about how do we get entrepreneurs to think differently about what it means to build a business. That how do we get them to think about the idea that creating value for employees, suppliers, community, the environment, and customers is really the thing that businesses were built to do. And if you do a great job at those things, then shareholders will always be rewarded. But if you think about shareholders first, if you separate what we say separating profit from purpose, you leave a space in the middle for bad things to happen. So the Conscious Venture Lab is really focused on that. We've been around since 2013. Launched the first iteration out in Howard County at the behest of then County Executive Ken Ullman. Heard about what we were trying to do and sort of got in touch with me through another friend of ours. A lot of you may know Julie Lenzer. And that's how I sort of came back to the area. I went to Catholic U, so I was very familiar with the area and had a business here for a long time, but came back to start the Conscious Venture Lab. We've run, we ran 5 cohorts. We're about to launch our 6th when COVID hit. And I had been through TN, I think, become friends with Ryan's partner, Jeff Mund. And Jeff and I were just on our catch-up cadence, once a month, and started talking about the impact that COVID was having on both of our businesses. And that's when Jeff Mund and Ryan and I started talking about the Founder Track platform and what we could do with it. And to Ryan's point, one of the things, we have a focus on, it's really a sort of a 3-legged stool that we think about. Conscious capitalism with stakeholder management. How do we support minority and female founders? And how do we invest more in urban environments and cities? And one of the things we've been thinking about for a long time, because we do run an investment product along with the Accelerator, is how do we expand our reach to impact more of those minority founders, even if we couldn't invest in them, because we have such a wealth of knowledge and networks and all of those connections. But the sort of silver lining, if you will, of COVID is that in an in-person environment, it's really hard for us to work with more than 5 or 10 companies. And as Ryan said, in this 6th cohort, which is coming to an end here in about 6 weeks, we got 42 companies on the platform. 70% of them are minority or female founders. Obviously, we want to invest in all of them, but the feedback we've been getting based on taking our content around conscious capitalism, layering that with what Ryan, Sears, and Jeff Munn have built with Founder Track, has been really just beyond anything we could imagine. You imagine, I was nervous about going virtual. So 2021, we're going to run 2 cohorts this year. We're excited about it. We're thinking about, can we get up to 60 or 70 companies that we can impact and help them grow? And, if we keep doing a good job at reaching into the right communities, think of 70% of those being minority or female founders. So we're really excited about that. We're raising a new fund in line with what Kate was talking about. We just launched Conscious Venture Fund 2, which will be a $50 million seed stage fund to invest in minority and female founders predominantly. So that's sort of where we are.
Great. So also a very big year ahead of you. We followed with a lot of interest and have been so impressed with what you're doing, and also the Founder Track team. So it's really exciting to see the force of your combined efforts as we watch that progress this year. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn to Kathy to hear about FTSE.
Great. Well, thank you. This is a great conversation. I appreciate hearing from everybody. So FTSE has been around 15 years. I haven't been with FTSE all that long. It's been 4.5 years. Our Accelerator program came out of what I think is kind of unique about our Incubator So let me back up. Our incubator was very traditional when I first came along, and I had like you guys, 4 amazing people who surrounded around me. One of them was John Raleigh, the founder of Rooster Bio. Absolutely great guy. He was going through the incubator. We both said, we're entrepreneurs ourselves, we're investors ourselves. Let's create an environment and a community where when the next bug sort of bites us, we're going to want to create it here inside the incubator. So we started looking at what are the things that entrepreneurs really need that they don't have. And it's being surrounded by really smart people. It's those CEO roundtables. And it seemed to us as if every incubator had a list of all these mentors. But when we started asking them, how did they connect with them? And do they have a relationship with them? And do they really get advice from them? Are they held accountable? The answer was no, because we're all individuals as entrepreneurs. Do we really want to pick up the phone and say, oh my God, I'm, lost sleep again last night on another roller coaster. I'm not sure whether I should do X, Y, or Z. So we put in place our strategic growth and advisory boards, and our board 2 years ago agreed to making it mandatory that every client that becomes a part of FTSE has to become a part of one of these advisory boards. And these 4 individuals who we all had the same vision together, they were the chairmen of each one of these boards and helped me to pull together the community here in Frederick. Many of them were graduates of FTSE as well, running really successful businesses. And from those specific advisory boards, there was a couple of us, we were sitting there, and it just seemed like it was the same sort of advice, the same sort of problems that was happening over and over and over again. And I looked to the guy next to me, I knew real well. And I said, we really need an accelerator, because it seems like it's the basic stuff that we're running through. Business model, each one of them, they thought they had a business model, but we could pick it apart. And they all thought that they had a really good value proposition, but they couldn't articulate it. And so that was the start of our accelerator, that we said we're going to do this. And it was a couple of us putting it together, and then fortunately we had gotten some grant funds, so I could go out and buy a lot of the content, and by hook or crook, because I am an entrepreneur, we figured some things out, and we put it on a system. I do want to talk to you, Ryan, because you're going to make it work. So it's not pretty, and Anthony knows that because he was in our very first accelerator 2 years ago. We're going on our 3rd cohort. And I think the things that we did really well was this whole idea of community. So we brought together 70 different mentors, all very strong mentors. All of them have, they're in the trenches. They've built their own businesses. They've scaled their own businesses. And so to be able to connect with a startup who doesn't have that level of experience, and give them real truth. We always say that, I've always said this, probably scare off half of them. I say there's a warning sign on the front door that says fierce conversations will be had here. This isn't your mom patting you on the back going, yes, you're going to succeed. So when we look at how we have taken sort of that path and has created this really community accelerator, it's not, I don't think, the content, it's the people more than it is even the content. And I don't want to take anything away from it, because we do use best practices, those types of things. But we really do believe that is what has gotten our companies much more successful, have gotten them, funded. It's what has gotten the attraction as well. And when we benchmark ourselves against a lot of the statistics that are out there that are pretty daunting, we realize we've got some real proven traction, and we're excited about the direction that we're heading in. There's still so much more in my mind that we need to do. And I think that the success that we have there is attributed to that fierce conversations. I always say it's a relationship. So our clients are really part of building FITSE. They're constantly, because I'm always talking about, what is it you're focusing on? What is it you're focusing your time on? All of us, we only have so many hours in a day. So they'll come back to me and say the exact same thing. If I'm putting something on, or if I'm doing some sort of an event, or if I'm putting out materials that just doesn't make any sense, please tell me that. I don't want to keep doing it if it's not helping you. So they're partners, our clients are partners in building our incubator and building our accelerator. And this next year, which is the reason why I said I do want to talk to you, Ryan, we are going to not completely redo, but the 12 teachers that we had for each one of the lessons, we're all getting together and now collaborating and saying, okay, we've done this 2 years now. How can we take this to a whole nother level? So that's kind of in a nutshell. I don't want to take a lot of time, but thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. And now, Matt, if we could hear just about PAX Momentum, that would be great.
Thank you. And I'm flattered and appreciative to be part of this group. And it's really a treat to hear the different perspectives and the different approaches to, fostering entrepreneurism and the common vision I think that we all have of the good that comes from an active and healthy entrepreneurial environment. For the last 15 years, I've been devoted to this early stage investing, mostly in the DC area. I did have a nice success last month that one of the early investments started trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange. One of my claims to fame is that I led the first round of investment to a local success story, Urgently, that works in roadside assistance. Their CEO was named the Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young last year for the Mid-Atlantic area. And they now employ over 300 people across the United States. So I launched PAX last year as an extension of this early stage investing that I love so much. We run 2 8-week programs each year. We select 10 B2B technology companies. We invest $50K in cash. We provide practical hands-on training, primarily related to customer acquisition and go-to-market. We're not a product product development accelerator. And we introduce the entrepreneurs into this wonderful and growing PAX community of investors and mentors. 3 of the 10 spots in each of our cohorts are reserved for climate tech companies. And I think, something unique about us would be the source of our investment dollars, that the money comes from successful investors who are also exited entrepreneurs. And these investors look to be part of PAX because they want to make a difference, through engaging proactively with the most promising and coachable entrepreneurs. They want to contribute to climate solutions. And they also know that, this environment cannot thrive unless there's a way to be profitable at early stage investing. And so it's got to be part heart, but also keeping the cerebral part engaged. And even the most carefully selected and coached companies, only a few of them are really going to be able to provide the financial return that will continue to attract the investment dollars that is the lubrication that this community needs. So that's a little bit about PAX Angels.
Great.
And momentum.
Thank you. I mean, we have such an incredible group of accelerators and leaders on the call today. It's wonderful. We touched very briefly, in a couple of you have touched very briefly on COVID. COVID being such a binary event. And I'd just be interested to hear from just your own perspectives, how it's kind of impacted your businesses or business models, and kind of what are some of the learnings and trends that have come out of it that you kind of believe are here to stay, and would be kind of interested. Maybe Matt, we'll start with you, and then the rest of the group can just jump in.
Sure. My co-founder is my son, and a year ago we're having this anniversary. First thing we did was we designed and ordered some business cards, and we were going to be all up and down the Eastern Seaboard attending networking events, and that was how we were going to find all the great talented entrepreneurs that we needed. We had to become experts at all things digital marketing. We were able to cast a very wide net. We figured out how to get lots of earned press and trade magazines across the country. And all along, we'd expected to be a mostly virtual program. But with COVID-19, we didn't have to justify ourselves. We have to explain why we're doing it. We could just go ahead and prove out our model. So, COVID-19, not something I would have wished or hoped for. But I think it forced us into practices. We had a wonderfully diverse first cohort. 2 companies that had 2 female co-founders, 2 African-American CEOs, 2 that were based outside the United States. I don't know how many that were foreign born, but I wouldn't be surprised if half of them. And I think that all kind of traces back to COVID-19, that through this broad net, we could find the very best and most promising entrepreneurs, and we ended up with this great, diverse group. So from a business perspective, no complaints.
Great. Anyone else like to jump in on impact of COVID?
Yeah, I think this has been really relevant to us in a big way, because we had previously kind of built this virtual platform, and it was kind of this almost like Noah building the ark, and then the flood came, and we were kind of already prepared, I felt like. And so in some ways, we were very lucky in that way to kind of already have a virtual platform. And we were already looking for ways, like Matt said, to how do we virtualize it? How do we get outside of our geography and kind of be known as a hub outside of this area for entrepreneurship and building companies? And kind of, we started to really rethink the accelerator model altogether, right? I mean, a lot of programs, and including programs I've run and others, we really depended on kind of in-person handshakes to happen, and people to, kind of serendipitously connect with one another. And hopefully that person that they connected with is the investor or the mentor or the person that connects them with a customer. Or we relied on kind of the sage on the stage talk to kind of create a lot of value. And those were really not that repeatable or duplicatable as far as a playbook goes. And so we've been looking for ways to kind of systematize this, create really effective and efficient ways for all the members of a startup ecosystem to contribute to it. In any given startup ecosystem, it's about dot connection, right? We're looking to find the mentors, the investors, the corporates, the ecosystem builders, the economic development folks that all want to contribute. But how do we do that in an effective and efficient manner? And my background is as a software designer and developer. I started thinking about this from a user experience perspective, right? And everything we do is very founder centric, but we wanted to create a great environment for all of those players in the ecosystem to have an easy on-ramp to come in and effectively and efficiently deploy their resources and get the thing they're looking for. And so for us, this was a catalyst to kind of move outside of our region and really kind of not be geographically constrained to the resources that are immediately around us, and look for the best in class company building techniques, people, resources that we can bring to our region to build the companies here.
Hey, Anthony, I like to even, both those are absolutely spot on. Obviously, we agree with what Ryan said, because we're sort of connected at the hip with those guys right now. But I want to even take this up a little bit of a notch. And Kate, I'd be really interested to hear what you think about this. But I think the one thing that we're really focused on now is that from the entrepreneur standpoint, what type of company is going to be successful coming out of COVID? And we are more than convinced that those companies that prioritize broad impact are going to be the companies that are going to accelerate out of everything that we've seen, from COVID to George Floyd. And for us, we think about that, and I know we're going to talk about the ESG thing, but we think about that in a little bit of a different way. Obviously, because of the language we use, companies that are trying to solve social and environmental problems are attracted to us. It's not specifically what we do, though. We're working more on how are you going to show up as a person, as an entrepreneur. So we're taking it up a level. So the broad impact is not just on the product, from the product or service, but it's on how you operate your business. So if we think about that in terms of things like all the folks that didn't have health care, right, going into or coming out of COVID, and the communities that were inordinately impacted by COVID, that we think that the companies and the entrepreneurs that are looking around saying, how do I build a business that helps to solve those problems, either from a product or service or just from the format of the business, right? That's what this idea of stakeholder management is all about. Matthew and Kathy, you guys probably don't know this, but I was involved in 2017 in running Accelerator for the Vatican. And the reason that the Vatican came to us was because they were doing work in environmental and social, it was mostly around environmental issues that came out of Pope Francis's 2015 encyclical, Laudato Si. But we had started having discussions with them saying, look, in my past as a management consultant, I've worked in not-for-profits that, pardon the pun, were doing the Lord's work, that were miserable places to be. And if you don't tie those two things together, so one thing we're seeing is, in addition to regular ESG, and again, Kate, I'd love to hear your take on this, we're thinking about how entrepreneurs can think differently about the practice of capitalism to give capitalism a better opportunity to help people solve some of these problems that we're seeing from COVID.
I appreciate that, Jeff. And you and I really align on so much of this so concretely. I think that 2020 is going to be sort of like the mass adoption year. Essentially, that's what history will show. I think, that's definitely what you're saying. It's what I believe. I'm a capitalist. I believe caring about people and the environment will allow us to preserve what's good about capitalism. And I think there are now a critical mass of people who are now conscious about solving for some of those biggest problems around health, climate change, inequality, and they're not going to continue to work for and invest in and buy from companies that are working against that. I think that we're all now actively thinking about building an energy system free of fossil fuels. And if we don't do that, there won't be a world to do business in. If we don't solve for the inequities in our system, we will suffer massive deficits in other ways, having to subsidize companies that don't pay living wages or provide adequate healthcare, for example. We celebrate frontline workers right now. We didn't before 2020. I think there's this awakening finally that is such a positive silver lining that we can all celebrate coming out of this crisis. And after COVID, after the murder of George Floyd, there's no going back to denial, collective denial on that front. Jeff, you and I have been pushing this narrative for a long time, and it's been really great to finally, not have to approach it sideways with people, quite frankly, and we've, obviously Halcyon has had to adapt. I hear everyone about sort of the great things about virtual and how you can reach more people. And I also do worry about what's going missing. I think personally I miss hugs. And when you're a community builder, like you mentioned, Kathy, like there is an importance to being physically together. And I know there's a quality element that's missing right now that I'm very excited to have back once we all can be together again. But obviously there's some really wonderful things that we're all finding get added when you really master this virtual world. And that's been great. I'll mention just a couple of our entrepreneurs as well, who obviously we've seen pivots in COVID. We've seen people be very challenged and we've seen people embrace new opportunities. And a couple that I'll mention is one of our entrepreneurs, Shavini Fernando of Oxyware, was creating a device because she had pulmonary hypertension and she wanted something cool you could wear. So she designed something that's basically like an earring that can monitor her oxygen levels. And it's no longer just for sort of, a very slim percentage of the population. She's actually now able to work with manufacturers and investors to get that ready for a much bigger adoption thanks to COVID. And similarly, Marcus Bullock, who runs Flickshop and works with incarcerated populations, providing the ability to send. Basically, like, we all forget how easy it is to text each other. You cannot do that when you're incarcerated, right? So people really lose touch with each other very quickly, which contributes to recidivism. And Marcus allows people to, as quickly as a text, send a postcard to a loved one in the system. And that went up in terms of adoption and revenue during this time because prisons were locked down from visitors. So just a couple of quick examples and what certainly Jeff and I believe, and I'm sure many of you do and are seeing about what I consider the mass adoption year.
We're seeing that in a tremendous number of places as well. And the last thing I'd like to just touch on, I think we, through talking about COVID and we've kind of touched on ESG, environmental, social governance. So I'd like to just, for the last question from this segment, what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the ecosystem at large. And just to, it's really a community and everyone plays different parts in really helping drive it forward. And so I'd be interested to hear how you both see individually how the accelerators fit in driving that forward. What kind of role can your different accelerators play, and different ways you see as we, a lot of what the monthly blend is about is also kind of learning and understanding the way different parts of the community can work together and collaborate in different ways to even accelerate and drive things forward faster. So how you see accelerators fitting and the role that they fit in driving the ecosystem forward as we look at the next few years, and just different ways accelerators may work together and collaborate with each other. It sounds like there's already connections between your groups, but just understand a little bit more how that kind of continues and grows as we move forward.
I'd be happy to jump on that one from a couple perspectives. One, I'm the new guy, so nobody's asking me how to run an accelerator just yet. They're going to wait and see if I'm in business a year from now. But one of the just remarkable and touching, things that I'll remember about this year is how people have been just extended themselves to help me be successful. And I don't want to get too corny, but I get a little teary-eyed just thinking about it. Like Kate, who I think I'm meeting for the first time, and I love Kate already because of the kindnesses and generosities from her teammates. Mike Mallory, who doesn't know me from Adam, but has done so many good things for me. If you guys might know Jeff Reed at Georgetown. I could not have been as successful this year as I was without Jeff Reed, and the list goes on and on. So I love this sense of community. I've got, even if I were feeling like a curmudgeon now, I've got no choice but to pay it forward and be nice to all the other accelerators in the area because of the kindnesses and generosity that I've been shown. On the other hand, I've got a little bit of a contrary view, and there's two numbers that are important for me. One is 50, and the other one is 3.8 million. Silicon Valley, right, which grabs almost half of all the venture capital money, is about 50 square miles in Northern California. The rest of the United States is the 3.8 million square miles. And, our DC, we come in usually 6th or 7th each quarter. And, the list of how much venture capital is placed here. And that's, a pretty tiny fraction of those stupid 50 miles that I kind of love and kind of hate in Northern California. So, that's part of the advantage I think that I've seen from COVID is I want to take Washington, D.C. and Philly and research Triangle Park and Pittsburgh and Atlanta and Toronto and beyond. And in some ways, band together and break down some of these regional, especially with early stage capital, there's very much a regional bias. And I think it's counterproductive, right? Because we all have areas that we excel in. And so, me that I like B2B, I like cyber. There's only so many great opportunities and entrepreneurs in this area to feed that. And so, I love the DMV and I want us to band together, but I also want us to think more cosmopolitan.
I am so right with you. And I think one of the benefits, if there is some to this whole coronavirus, is that it has allowed us to step outside our region. And I mean, even Frederick is pretty small, and people think, oh, I don't want to go all the way up 270 or over 70 to come all the way out here to Frederick. And I get that. But now we're able to really go totally global. And I think in a very big way that we've never been able to do before. There's so much capital and there's so much money out there. And I get the whole Silicon Valley thing. I completely agree with you. But I think this allows us to connect and become even stronger just in the DMV area as well, sharing the best practices. I mean, all of us, I think there's so much that we could do together. But then being able to reach out even further. And so there's one thing I want to kind of plug in this, because I'd love for all of you guys to be a part of it. I don't know about you guys, but we're always having to do these big events and stuff. And this is how we connect a lot of our companies, and we keep the ecosystem really close. So you can't do events anymore. And you look at them, they're just being canceled left and right. And it was driving me crazy, because I kept thinking, why are we canceling these things? We can go even bigger than before. So I started talking to Greg Cancelosi over at Betamore, and he does, his big event, and we do our big event, and everybody does their own big events very, very much in a silo. And I said, what if we put something together and it's all virtual? And so we ended up buying a platform that's going to do the whole videos and allow us to really show the world the best of DMV. And we can put the whole thing together. And then, of course, we got to do a fun sort of pitch fest at the end with the drive-in movie theaters. And so instead of a drive-in movie theater, it's going to be a simulcast drive-in pitch fest. And we can reach out to some of the other incubators and some of the other accelerators in Korea, in Germany, wherever it is, in order to make them a part of this. And I'd love for you guys to be a part of this as well. It's already getting some traction, and we're putting the whole thing together. But it'd be a great way for us to really reach out local investors, global investors, as well as, like you're saying, how many really great cyber companies are there? Well, how many really great biotech companies are there? Green energy, ag tech companies. There's a lot we can do actually together. But so I'm excited about that, because who is going to want to, come up to Frederick when it's like, hey, I can get on a quick Zoom call, and when I don't know about you guys, but when I start thinking about what has really changed with the whole coronavirus, I had 50 companies. I have 64 companies in the incubator right now. When I was hearing you, I'm sitting here thinking, how the heck are you going to do 100 cohort? People were telling me that I was crazy to even think about 15 in a cohort. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to streamline my processes in order to better serve 64 companies. So those are the things that I think we need to become much more efficient about. And if you got it figured out, Ryan, I want to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you need. So
sometimes I drop these numbers on Ryan in a form like this, so he won't push back at me, in the middle of it, because we're straining the tech, but we're getting there though.
Hey, that's what it takes. You strain it and it makes it better, right?
Well,
right.
What I'm going to do now is hand this back over to Tien, and we'll kind of start the second segment of today's video podcast.
Great. Thank you very much, Anthony. And thanks to our awesome guests who are giving us a lot of great new information and success stories for what they've been doing. And I have a couple of questions, I guess, maybe for Kate, since Kate, you are the most senior in the sense that, you're Incubator Accelerator has been around for a long time, and you're highly successful, I might add, too.
Not the oldest, though, let's be clear.
Yeah, very diplomatic there, Tien.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I think Jeff Cherry or maybe Matt or I might take that one. So, yeah, you're okay. But I have a question for you guys. So Matt, and I appreciate your comments about everyone cooperating, and I totally agree. I think the Washington, D.C., Baltimore regions, we're very collaborative and cooperative, I think, relative to other ecosystems. Of course, we always want to do better. Mm-hmm. But, for Kate and for all of you guys, what makes you successful? What makes a good accelerator successful? And to kind of with that, what are the ideal traits of potential companies that are going into one of your upcoming cohorts? And I do know that capital is important, and I really am impressed by all of you. The fact that you've gone beyond just injecting small amounts of cash and providing infrastructure and office space and even beds, but now you're actually going more big time on the capital front. But I really would love to know, what's making you guys successful?
Yeah, I think it's quite a few things. That I think if someone was thinking about setting up an incubator or an accelerator, one, I think really understanding, if there's a need for what you plan to do and how you're going to differentiate from the many other offerings that are out there. As we all know, incubators and accelerators really kind of came to the forefront sort of around the 2010s. And there was an explosion in some ways of a whole variety of them. And now we're kind of reaching that phase that any sort of industry reaches where it's kind of whittling down to sort of the best ones for each purpose, perhaps. And obviously we're quite differentiated in a number of ways, most critically around looking for the best impact companies. We think that, just like Kathy was saying, if you're going to be good, you've got to really be able to know how to create community, because entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. There's some really atrocious analogies for it, staring into the abyss, chewing glass, roller coasters are brought up all the time. It's horrible, right? And if you don't have people around you that you can turn to, and to a point made earlier, you don't necessarily want to turn to a mentor, someone you respect and look up to, and whose network you're going to need later when you're at a moment of vulnerability. So how do you create, a group of people who you can speak with? And we found that that's one of our critical successes. We keep our cohorts quite small because I do think that we have seen failings when incubators create huge groups. Usually they're more like glorified workspaces when they do this. And they'll create a huge group to kind of de-risk the investment, quite frankly. And then they're only really able to serve a couple in the very top that are going to bring them returns. We get around that because we're not taking equity in the companies. So that's a critical difference. We have studied, what makes a good ecosystem, and ultimately we see ourselves as ecosystem builders more than anything. And if you want, you can check that out. It's called the Seer Report, SEER, standing for a Social Enterprise Ecosystem Report. Essentially, what we discovered after interviewing lots and lots of entrepreneurs and surveying a whole bunch of people is that, great ecosystems have funding availability, good quality of life, human capital and talent, and regulation and receptivity. And to the earlier discussion about sort of this area, DC scores really highly on many of those, as you can imagine. Our intellectual capital is outstanding. Our tech capital and sometimes our financial know-how, the CFO positions, the coding positions are the ones that are the hardest to find here, really need some work. And then obviously, as people have brought up, that funding component, which we can talk about, I hear everyone on the valuation front. We've had a company that got a $10 million valuation out in Silicon Valley and a $1.7 million valuation in DC. And it's because we're so wonky and conservative, as a people. And quite frankly, I think the true value of that company is somewhere in the middle. But you can imagine how confusing that is. And so I think we should all work together on the incubator, on the capital front. And ideally, in this region, in the DMV region, there should be one door, right? So that you you can come in, at Halcyon, and we can direct you to PACs if that's what you need, or vice versa. That's ultimately what would really serve us the best. I'm trying to be thoughtful about my answer here in terms of, what makes a good incubator. And I definitely, again, I think it is figuring out that community and helping entrepreneurs know whether or not you are going to be the best fit for them. So being really, really clear about that and about who you are and what you can provide them from the start. And then we can get into, maybe later, how to provide a bit more of the holistic support that's needed, because it is more than just capital and mentorship, I find.
That's a lot of great stuff there that Kate said, and don't disagree with any of that. I'll add a few things. I think that one thing that could make the ecosystem better is that it goes back to what Matt was saying about money being focused regionally, all that sort of stuff. That there's a ton of money here in the DMV area. It's just too much on the sidelines, right? I think part of the valuation problem is that the money's not in the game, right? So when there's less money, the valuations aren't going to be as high because people aren't willing to spend the money they have. So that's been the thing that's been most frustrating to me. I mean, we've been focused on this, 4 states get the venture capital for a long time. I think we can do a better job at getting that money off the sidelines and, sort of coalescing that. I think that one of the ways to do that, well, 2 things. One of the one additional piece for what Kate said that I think makes a great accelerator, has certainly been a benefit for us, is that having a specific point of view about what we think about business. Because that is a thing that allows entrepreneurs to come to us and say, this is for me or isn't for me. And if it's not for me, I'll say, well, you should go see Kate. We should go see Matt. We should go see Ryan. We should go see Kathy, because they have a different point of view than we do. There's some that don't have a point of view at all, right? They're just sort of churning through things. And then I think that's hard for entrepreneurs to figure out whether that works for them. So I find that the accelerators that have whatever that point of view is, but have a specific point of view about what they care about and how the world works, are better for a group of entrepreneurs, and then they are able to help those entrepreneurs move along. I think the other thing from an ecosystem standpoint that I think is really important, as I think about this, as Tien, as you know, I started as an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 26 years old, and I did that for 30 years before I decided to get into this game. And I think about what would I be looking for as an entrepreneur? It's sort of that pathway, right? One of the things that makes Silicon Valley, I think, so attractive is that if I come in with nothing more than an idea, I can look at the ecosystem and say, well, I can go here, 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 and there, and then I'm at my IPO. I think that we're bunched up in a bunch of different places, but we don't have a clear pathway. Certainly in Baltimore, we know. I go back and forth to DC. I was in DC for 30 years, Matt, but I've been in Baltimore for the last 7. So in Baltimore, we have less of that. I'm not sure how it is in DC now, but I think region-wide, it would be beneficial to us as we all come together to think about how do we think about this as an entrepreneur and look at what we're providing and see if there's a path for me from idea to IPO or idea to exit or idea to whatever we want to call it. But that whole pathway along both from a capital raising standpoint, but also from connections, networks, all those things, they change as my business changes. As I go up the ladder, the things I need change. And if those things aren't here, I'm not likely to stay here. That's been a big problem in Baltimore anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of a mentality thing. I mean, you in Silicon Valley, you have a lot of new money, and there was a lot invested in them when they came through the ecosystem. And so naturally, they come back and make early stage investments again, right? On the East Coast, in an opposite way, there's a lot of old money here, and it's about preservation of capital. And that's why we see those huge differences in valuation, because the risk is perceived very differently. And so we need a mentality shift here to some degree, and they probably need a little bit of a mentality shift there with some of these crazy valuations that are pushing up into the public markets. But I think one of the ways that we've kind of seen to do that is to create this kind of virtuous loop where founders will come through the program. And like Matt said, they were treated so well by the ecosystem that when they are successful, of course they come back and mentor and invest in the next round of companies. And we need to create that effect of kind of like the PayPal mafia, right? Where, the 10 first employees at this really successful company in the region come back and reinvest into the ecosystem. And so if we can somehow create that virtuous loop, and we've already seen some of that. We've had some awesome outcomes where founders went through our program, came back to be a mentor, and then wrote their first angel check into a company. And we really focused and we're very proactive on how do we activate some of that sideline capital, to your point, Jeff. And we went out and we seeked the people that hadn't written any checks, but they were high net worth individuals. They had tremendous experience, especially in Annapolis where we're at. There's a tremendous amount of affluence here. And I'm proud to say we had, I think, over 50 accredited investors at our last demo day. 25 of them were there prospectively looking for their first angel deal. And we actually created a syndicate around the money that we were putting into a deal to have them write their first check and show them how to activate their capital and how to do it in a responsible way. And at the same time, get all the benefits that an angel investor gets, right? They want to be close to the deal. They want to know the founders. They want to be able to tell the story. They want influence and be able to kind of contribute their expertise to that. So it's not just about the money. I think it is about those intangible things. And what has kept angel investing local is that you can sit across the table, look someone in the eye, and understand their business and be right there with them. And so we've kind of take a grassroots approach here and just get the flywheel spinning. And that's what I see us doing. And it's really a long-term perspective. I always have this 10 or 20 year time horizon in my head. I was born and raised in Annapolis. And one of the reasons I do what I do is because I see it as this long-term project of building the ecosystem from the ground up. And to Matt's point, one of our core mantras here at Launch Annapolis and Founder Track is give before you receive. And so anytime we're having a networking event or anything like that, I'm just walking around the room and I'm like, who are you? What are you doing? And how can I help you? Okay. And if they start talking about someone, I say, tell me, what can I do? Who can I connect you with? And we've seen that attitude just permeate. And it is really cool to kind of see that loop happen, even in just something like a networking event, not even talking about investing capital or running a program. And so that culture is really important.
I'm almost embarrassed to tell you what my big success lesson was this year. So my son, who was part of my motivation for doing this particular, I'd invested in lots of companies before PAX, but this variation was to have a chance to work with my 4 sons. And the one that's been primarily involved as a senior at Maryland in environmental sciences. Turns out he's got a passion for soil. Who'd have guessed? And he was the one that dragged me kicking and screaming into this idea of reserving the 3 spots for climate tech companies. And certainly I thought this, and I'm sure that all of our investors at some point, either out loud or to themselves, have pondered how much of a tax we're going to have to pay in the form of reduced returns because of this inclusion. And there's no doubt that our program is way better, and a lot of our success is completely due to this focus that, again, I never would have thought of. But the glow on our brand, the quality of investors that we get, there's just an added element here that's hard to quantify. I think it's ultimately financially going to be beneficial for all the investors and everyone that participates in the program. And no doubt that we're getting better. I think that's part of the reason why we had the diversity that we had in our first cohort, is because of this counterintuitive, push into a vertical that I was hesitant to get into. So I'm preaching to the choir, obviously, with this group, because you guys have all figured this out before, but you can welcome me to the club anyway.
I love hearing everything that you guys are saying. It so resonates with me. But out of all of it, I would say it's the whole ecosystem that everyone has been touching on that is so critical, I think, to the success of any incubator, any accelerator. I love what you're doing, Ryan. That was a big thing at CEO Space years and years ago, that you weren't able to go out and ask for anything you wanted until you've given to others over and over again. And I agree with you. If you look at some of the most successful accelerators, they have that alumni network that just loves the organization so much that they give back. And I actually measure some of our success to see how many of our alumni is actually back investing in, as well as advising our companies and stuff. I think that that's a real tribute to that. But I love what you just said, practice what you preach, Matthew, because I think about that all the time. And from an incubator perspective, we talk to our companies about business models. But what about the business model of incubators and business model of accelerators? How do you create, and I'm not going to get into that discussion, but it's something for us to really think about, because if we are telling these guys that they should have this really solid business model and they should be, great leaders, and yet the organization might not be a great leader, or you might have a few employees and you're yelling at them all the time. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be models, and the incubators and the accelerators, I think, have to be models of best practices, whether it's leadership, whether it is, our environmental impact that we have on it, and all of that. And I always go back to the practice what you preach kind of stuff. I mean, they should be able to come to us when they've gotten their first employee and say, hey, can I take your employee handbook and, do a search and replace, search Fitzy and replace it with something else. And I know we're not there yet. And I would love to be able to work with all of the other incubators and accelerators to really continue to up and level up our game. Because it's hard, as we all know, doing it out there by ourselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Kathy, and I want to congratulate all of you, because it does start with leadership, and all of you are great leaders, and you set examples for your team as well as for your cohort companies. So, a wise mentor once told me, there's riches and niches, and I think that's also to Matt and Kate and Jeff's point as well. The fact that you each have your own swim lanes and you're so focused and you're trying to be the best in the world at what you're doing, that's why you're successful. One thing I have a question regarding diversity, not what you guys are doing, because you guys are doing, leading stuff, top in the country stuff. Washington, D.C. may not get the most capital, but we do lead the country in diversity. And I'm so proud to be part of this community, and I'm proud of everything you guys are doing. Can we do more? I mean, what can we do? All of you are doing multiples of what anyone else in the country is doing. But is there something we can do to continue to, and how does that translate into more success in this region?
That's a tough question. I know we can always be doing more in my mind, or we might as well just call it up and retire.
Yeah, Jeff, we've talked about this before. I mean, it's a proactive activity. You can't just sit back and say, well, we're inclusive, anybody's welcome. That doesn't work. You've got to really work at it. I mean, over across our cohorts, we had over 60% of our graduates have been from underrepresented populations. Our hometown accelerator, Launch Annapolis, which launches tomorrow, has 83% underrepresented founders, and we have to recruit. We've got to find ways to get out there and make it happen. And I'd really like to hear Jeff talk on this, because I know we've had some conversations around this.
And also, I do want to also mention, how do you balance doing well by doing good? Because some of the conventional wisdom, which I disagree with, says, well, okay, we can invest in underrepresented entrepreneurs, but our performance is going to be worse. I don't agree with that, but I mean,
I'll let Jeff take the floor, please.
Jumping at the bit on that one, right? I think that, so first part, diversity. Ryan's 100% right. I mean, the thing that we do, I think, as well, if not better than anyone in that regard, is that we've gone about and we spend a lot of time identifying the organizations, the places, the groups, the cities where diverse entrepreneurs are located, right? Black Girls Code and Black Girl Ventures and Baltimore Young Professionals here in Baltimore and all those organizations, and actually then going to them and saying, hey, we want to recruit, we want to see what's going on. So when we're off, when we're not in session, I spend an inordinate amount of time on the road or now virtually reaching out to those organizations, letting them know what we do and finding out what they're doing to say, can we partner with you? Because we know that there are, and this goes to your second point, Tien. This is, I've been on the bus, 5 times with Steve Case, and started out saying they're really smart, talented, innovative, driven people all over our society. Opportunity, on the other hand, is limited, oftentimes by race or gender. Right. So when we always say that that's not the right question to ask anymore, can you do good and do well? Right. From a business standpoint, first of all, if you're not doing good, you're going to be much less likely to do well. Right. And I know Kate and we talk about this and just nod our head, incessantly. But the other thing is when I say, if you think about what Ryan said and what I said, 83% underrepresented founders, the numbers I'm sure are high for Kate as well, 70% for us. We not only is that not concessionary, because actually what I've done is broaden my lens. We will invest in anyone. We just do a better job at getting into all those communities, right? So when we talk about being a meritocracy, we actually are really doing it. And we can say, well, how many of these underrepresented communities did you go to say that you were a meritocracy? If you went to none, then you can't be a meritocracy. I have a friend that went to work for IBM, and she said, I'm only going to hire a diverse group. And they said, well, that's not what we do at IBM. We just hire the best candidate. And she said, well, and the last person you hired, did you talk to everyone? Because if you didn't talk to everyone, how do you know you've hired the best candidate? So we just do a better job at trying to talk to everyone, and as at least many people we can. So what we're actually doing is broadening our lens. I'm finding deals that other people aren't finding. Why? Because I spent 5 hours with Black Girls Code, and they didn't do that. So I found deals that they never would have found, and selfishly, because no one else is looking at them on the East Coast, I probably paid less for it, right? So I think that you have to think about this more holistically, that we want to really broaden our lens, get as many people into the pipeline as we possibly can, and you have to do the work, right? And you're going to uncover ideas that other people are simply going to overlook. In this group, that's probably not happening, but I could go to another 10 incubators, accelerators. Some of those that all of us know, they're not doing the work. They're not doing the pick and shovel work that it takes to find those deals.
Yeah, at risk of sounding like a broken record, but hopefully I can be additive. 59% of our companies have a woman founder and 69% have a founder of color. And we've never applied quotas. Similarly, Jeff, right? Like it's just been about making sure that everyone can see themselves represented at Halcyon, inviting people, breaking down our own networks, which is the hard work, looking at your own bias, looking at your own network, making sure that you're not inadvertently gatekeeping. I think the breaking down of social networks is the number one type of work we should be doing, because even if we are successful in increasing the number of women and women investors and investors of color, unconscious bias hits everyone because we're all in the same system. So we need to make sure that we are just creating more and more on-ramps for all of us to find, talent regardless of where it is. So that's, something that we're just working continuously on, and it will always be work that we all have to do and figure out ways to get better and better at. I can speak largely to DC as a region, and I think of it in two parts. There's the federal city of Washington, and there's DC, and there's a couple of opportunities here, on the Washington side. because tech is so young an industry and it's a frontier and it's full of possibility, and that's what we all love about it. But we've also seen the problems that have been created by this incessant gap between the leading edge and, frankly, the understanding of our legislators of what it is all about, and the lack of protections that leads to. I think as the industry grows, we're actually going to see more and more companies realizing they have to be here, where, in the town that's 19.9% lawyers, where, they can influence the kinds of regulation that is going to get passed. Amazon knows it. And I think that's going to be a huge boon for DC, for Washington and the region. But in many ways, DC is a great city to be in already. If you are a woman or a person of color, there's a high percentage of us in leadership positions in all sectors. And we need to make sure that stays in place, as the tech world sweeps in, which is not that diverse. And how can we make sure that we're not just leveraging, that, which I would like to see more of as a brand, come to DC because we are more diverse and equitable than any other city. How do we make sure we're leveraging that as a brand for talent attraction, but also how are we making sure we have on-ramps for the people that already live here to get skills training so that they can get all these great new jobs that I truly know are going to be coming. And then lastly, around your the doing well or doing good question, I truly believe that that is an outmoded idea and false dichotomy. Like, I would invert it and ask you, just like Jeff, which of your portfolio companies in your investment portfolio performed the best this year? Because in mine, they were Enphase Energy, SolarEdge, Tesla, all companies that, frankly, as they create profit, they create impact, and vice versa. It's no longer that if you're doing good, you're giving away your profit. That used to be the thesis that I'd constantly have to fight against. And I don't think that's the case anymore. So we just launched Halcyon Angels this year in the middle of the crisis. It's only 6 months old. We already have 25 angels, and they've invested $745,000 in 3 companies that all are going to have great impact. And I guarantee you that all of those investors want their money back. I would say further, they expect great returns on that money. So, these days, consumers want to buy from companies that are conscious in every regard. And impact companies have higher brand value, meaning they can charge more for their products, quite literally. And as I mentioned before, we're all gradually shifting to aligning our purchasing and investing with the world that we all want to see and the world we want to have a role in building, because quite frankly, it is lunacy to wish for a better world and continue to invest in the same way that we always have. And as with everything, in 20 years, those of us who have made those early investments and investments like we've been pointing to in impact companies stand to reap the most gains.
That's brilliant, Kate. I think you guys are definitely the poster children for doing well and doing good at the same time, which is sort of the underpinnings behind the whole conscious capitalism movement. And I'm so happy to see that it's getting more active in our region and nationally as well. Thank you guys so much for your time. I have one final question, and that is, our viewers and listeners are probably totally motivated and inspired by everything you guys are talking about. I'm sure there are, as well as other entrepreneurs out there, how can they get involved with your particular program? I know each of you has, different types of niches and different types of things, but do you have any specific needs for investors, for mentors, applicants? I'll start with Kathy, and then we can go to Matt and then go around the horn.
Oh, well, that's an easy one. I mean, building the ecosystem is the number one critical thing. So, of course, we're looking for any sort of resource partners that's going to be able to, that it's the right fit. It has to be that are very collaborative, that really want to give back, that are individuals who see real value in growing and scaling businesses. So, that's across the board. Of course, I'm not going to turn, capital away and investors away. So, we're always looking for that as well. But those partnerships, and I think the collaborations is really what we're looking for the most. My community manager is going to say, follow us on social media. She said, make sure you say that. But really pick up the phone, give us a call, drop by. Our biotech center, of course, is open. I'm here now.
But you have board members and mentors from Virginia, from Austin, Texas, right? So you're more of a...
Absolutely. And
biotechnology, life sciences, that's your core focus, right? pretty much.
That and technology as well as green energy. We're getting a lot of ag tech and stuff too, which makes a lot of sense here in this particular area. Regenerative medicine is just becoming huge. The coronavirus has just, I'll never say we're full because we figure out ways of making it work. We've got people that are partnering with others in similar labs and stuff as well. But it's the regenerative medicine, the whole stem cells, I think with coronavirus, I think they're calling it the bio revolution you're talking the biomolecules, biosystems, biomachines, bioprinting, biocomputing is taking off. And it's taking off because of this vaccine.
Well, that's awesome, Kathy. Thank you. Matt, how about you? How can people get involved with PAX?
Well, let's see. First of all, thank you for the thoughts on the diversification. We knocked it out of the park our first go around, and I've been trying to figure out how to replicate that. But I think what Jeff said, that just that wide net, the broad net, is I think what we owe we search high and low for good entrepreneurs and invite them to apply. So we'll keep doing that. My world in technology and with the investing has been male and white, and right now, my angel investors, outstanding, but they're a little on the male and a little on the white side, including some Asians and Indians. So female investors and others that, are representative of the kinds of underrepresented founders. I want and need investors like that, and I think that will make my program a better program.
Thank you. Kate?
Thanks for the opportunity, Tian. I encourage anyone who wants to get involved in Halcyon, you can go to our website and sign up for a newsletter. That's the best way to hear about all of the offerings because we have different application cycles all the time for specific groups of entrepreneurs and generally. You can certainly follow us on social media. If you are interested in being an angel investor, or a more passive kind of investor, we've definitely got lots of opportunities for you. So I encourage anyone who's interested in that, actively doing it or wants to learn about it, certainly please reach out either to our general email box, or if you're more comfortable, just find me on LinkedIn and drop me a line. And that's probably, I'll leave it at that.
That's great, Kate. And also, for those of you watching and listening, Kate is the CEO of Halcyon, which also is a tremendous advocate for artists and arts, both visual and performing. And I've had the pleasure of being at some of your awesome properties in Georgetown over the years, and we can talk about that at another time. But Halcyon is much more than just an incubator or an accelerator for early stage companies. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah.
How can people get involved with what Founder Track is doing?
Yeah, so it's kind of a new frontier for us. Going from being an accelerator to now offering a platform to propel the mission of other accelerators, right? And so we're looking for anyone who's trying to grow their mission, right? So if you're looking, like Jeff Cherry, to go from 10 companies in your last cohort to 42 and expand in that kind of way in a really effective and efficient way, you should talk to us. So we've worked with individual entrepreneur support organizations, also individual ecosystem builders, existing accelerators, or somebody that's looking to stand up a new program. So economic development departments. And so we've noticed there's a lot of people the environment's moving around a lot and there's a lot of new things starting. We can help with that. And so if that's you and you want to expand your mission, come talk to us. You can go to our website, foundertrack.com, and sign up for our newsletter. You can email me at ryan@foundertrack.com or find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Sears in Annapolis.
That's great, Ryan. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your pivot and all the great things you're doing to support the ecosystem. Jeff, you have the last word. How can people get involved with CVL?
Well, before I get there, a couple of quick things sort of for me and Kate. Some people who may not know this, 2019, there was a website called Unicorn. It's a student website for social impact. They named the top 10 greatest social impact accelerators in the world. And two of them are right here, Halcyon and Conscious Venture Lab, with worldwide coverage. So, we got a great ecosystem here, people doing great things. And I don't think that we we pump it up enough, and we ought to do more than that. So more of that. So a couple of quick things, but we're raising a fund, as I said earlier. So if anyone who's interested, jcherrycvpartners.vc. I'll send some stuff out to the folks on this group, but you can find me on LinkedIn as well. That's probably top of mind for us. We're pivoting our model on the business model. Kathy, thank you, on our accelerator. So more to come on that, but we'll be raising capital for both of those. And we're always looking for great mentors, great partners, corporate partners. I may reach out to some of you guys to join us in mentorship. And our next cohort launches, or call for applications, will launch on January 15th. So just a few days away. So I'll leave it there.
Well, that's terrific. You guys are so active and so doing such impactful things, and wishing you the very best in the new year. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us this today. And I'll turn it over to Anthony with some closing comments.
Great. So thank you, Tien, and thank you to our incredible guest today. This was just a truly wonderful show with Matt Hanson from Pax Momentum, Kathy Brady from FTSE, Jeff Cherry from Conscious Venture Labs, Ryan Sears from Founder Track, and Kate Goodall from Halcyon. And we want to really thank you all for the tremendous leadership and all that you do to make this ecosystem, this unique ecosystem that we have, and everything that you guys spoke about today in terms of your visions for 2021 will only make it stronger. And we want to thank you also again for being on our show today. Once again, I'd like to thank all of our guests, Matt Hanson, Kathy Brady, Jeff Cherry, Ryan Sears, and Kate Goodall, for joining us on this month's The Monthly Blend. And we look forward to seeing you all again next month when we bring you some of the area's leading entrepreneurs.